So this is Museum Minds. Hi, Michelle. Good to see you. And if you have not attended Museum Minds before, if you came from some lovely shares from our co-presenter today, or if you're just new to the Museum Minds gig, this is a great place where we all come together across museum industry to learn a little bit, to ask some questions, to get feedback from other museum pros or museum newbies, just to talk museums and have fun. And Rainey and I get to have lots of new museum friends. So good. Awesome. I love seeing intros in the chat. Thank you so much, Daniel and Jessica. I literally just got off a call with Jessica. She's a museum grad student. Oh my gosh, she's doing some amazing things when it comes to creating rubrics for language and writing used in museums. So if you're interested, message Jessica. She's got some cool things going on. So anyways, again, this is part of the reason why we do Museum Minds, because we know that there's tons of resources out there for all of us. And why not come together and share those resources back and forth? So, all right. This is our agenda for today. Just a couple minutes of housekeeping, which we're in right now. And then we're going to do about 25 minutes of interactive learning. And we're going to go through an agenda. The cool thing today is that I have a special guest. Rainey's not on camera, but we have Laura today. So she's going to be my counterpart, and we're going to chat it up and have lots and lots of fun today. So we're going to do, there's Laura. She'll introduce herself in just a second. So we're going to do a little bit of learning to get us to about the half hour. And then we're going to have just a quick little break. Literally, it's for like us to get a drink of water and just like get up and stretch a little bit. And if for some reason you only have 30 minutes today and you need to leave at the 30-minute mark, feel free to do so. But as I always say, you'll miss the best part, because the best part is the second part. Well, I shouldn't say best part because the guest speaker is on the call already. So the extra fun part is at the end, where we do networking and questions, and you can learn from each other and just meet your friends, which is really great. So that's what's coming up. Who are these people? There's Rainey actually on the screen. Here's Rainey and I. We are the hosts of Museum Minds. We both are independent museum consultants and help out in the museum industry in lots of different ways. And part of the reason why we started Museum Minds is because we wanted to make sure that everybody had a resource that was free. So every month we get on and do some cool stuff. We talk about amazing things and we meet cool people. So that's Rainey and I. I do museum consulting, and I also do professional coaching for museum and nonprofit professionals. It's been so much fun. Rainey runs an amazing marketing strategist company. One of her latest clients, she talked to me about it the other day, was that she was working alongside an emerging museum to come up with their name. So with her background in marketing and the fact that she has a pretty cool name for her business, she now has been contracted to help name a brand new museum. How cool is that, right? I think it's awesome. All right, so our 5 to 10 minutes or 5 to 7 minutes of intros is done. Yes, you're still going to hear me talk more, but all the housekeeping is done. So we've literally brushed off the dust. So we're going to dive in a second, but I do have an outline. And I'm not sure if the way that I chose my screen share is going to clue you into all of my notes or not. So bear with me for just a second. All right, I think. All right, are we back to normal? Give me a thumbs up if we're back to normal. Does it all look right? Does it look like it was before? Okay, thank you so much. Lovely. Wonderful. I see that. Good things. All right. Okay, cool. All right, so before we get started, we're going to have a couple of little things here just to kind of set the groundwork. Today, we are chatting with Laura Hooper, the two of us. And you'll get to know her a little bit, but before we do that, we're going to do just a little intro of ourselves by answering a question in the chat, all right? So here's a chance for you to be you and do something really, really fun. The question for today is, if there were no limitations whatsoever, where would you travel to? Put your answer in the chat, just so we can get to know you and see a little bit about who you all are. No limitations whatsoever. Ooh, Africa, yes. Scandinavia. Now I have to think of my own answer. I didn't think ahead of time. Bora Bora, yes, yes. Oh my gosh, the next planet. Yes, Mike, educational troublemaker. You and Scott Turner need to get together. He is a self-proclaimed webinar troublemaker. So I'm surprised he's not on today, but that's okay. All right, love it. Okay, so next thing we're going to put in the chat, just to get a framework and understanding about what we're going to chat about today, is I want you to put in the chat, what is the age range of your team? What is the age range of your team? I'll give the example. My age range for my team that I had in my last museum was aged 16 to 75. Is that standard? Yes. 70 to 60 plus? Yes. This is getting our wheels turning a little bit about what today's topic of diversity has as its qualifiers. We're not necessarily talking about cultural diversity. Today, we're talking about diversity of experience, diversity of people, diversity of point of view, things like that. 30 to 55, 20s to 60s. Yes. Volunteers up to 88 years old. Man, I want to be that person, being out volunteering and having fun at 88 years old. Fantastic. It's great, Shayna, 100%, for sure. All right, so you've spent the last 11 minutes listening to me chat. Let's introduce Laura. So Laura's going to chat with us a little bit today, all about finding that productivity in diverse populations and diverse things. So Laura, give us a little bit about your background and why we chose you to talk about this subject. No pressure.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Laura, and I'm excited to be with you all today. I was here last time for Rainey's amazing workshop, and I just think this is such an amazing community that y'all are building. So I'm very happy to be a part of it. I've been in the arts industry my whole life. I'm an arts lover. I'm an arts participant. I have led, I think one of the reasons you probably asked me to do this, Beth and Rainey, was because I have experience leading teams, but what I'm most passionate about within that is actually making sure that everyone within those diverse teams has their voice heard. So whether that person is 16 or 88, I believe it's my job, assuming I'm in a position of authority or can make myself in a position of authority, to make sure that the 88-year-old feels just as valued as a 16-year-old and everyone in between. I'm sure we all know that some people have more confidence. We've got extroverts in the group. We've got people who are used to being heard. And I found that my teams perform best when I set the example of of how the ship is going to run, and that ship is going to be very equitable amongst everyone so that everyone can get their voice heard.
Awesome. Great intro and preview of all the good things we're going to talk about today. So, a couple other things I saw in the chat. Really, really good question, Mike, the troublemaker. Was what is a team? Yes, that was actually one of the things we had on our list as let's define what a team is. So in our definition today, a team is anybody who's working together. That could be a supervisor and their employees. It could be a manager and another manager. It could be a coordinator and their boss. It could be a fundraiser and a donor. That is a team as well. Laura, is there any other types of teams that we're thinking about that I haven't addressed?
Nope, just whatever project you're working on, your team can change. So you're considering every project's team when you're thinking about, planning for that.
Awesome. So essentially it's when people work together, they are a team. Again, the definition of diversity today, again, I talked about that earlier, point of view, life experience, not necessarily DEI type stuff. That is included. Of course, we're always being mindful of it. But for today's conversation, that's where we're talking. And then also, Laura had pointed out too, when we did a little bit of planning, that today is really talking a little bit more about, we're coming at it through the lens of leadership. And that as a leader, anybody in your team, of course, can be a leader, but as a leader, we automatically assume that responsibility of productivity and togetherness in our teams. So that's another lens we're putting on today. It's all about helping everybody be feeling empowered and respectfully curious within the space. Okay. Michelle, I see your nodding head. Thanks for your agreement. All right. So, Laura, give us a little bit. Can you give us kind of a framework or understanding? When we chatted, we kind of came up with an idea of where is the best place we could practice this diversity and productivity?
Best place we could practice it.
Yes.
Like in prep work?
Yeah, and also like we segmented it out into 3 things.
Right.
Everybody has meetings, right?
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. Prepping for the meeting, during the meeting, and follow up is a really good place to position yourself as the leader, and also, especially if you are the leader, but stepping into the role, or deciding to put more oomph into what you're already doing, it can also create those boundaries that you put on it that we're going to talk about today, actually create a safe space for your team, whoever that team makeup is, whether it's your supervisor or an intern, for them to voice their opinions and actually get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was one of the things that we said is, okay, so if we take all of these tips and tricks and we put them into kind of this qualifier of we're going to have a meeting with our team. How can we practice different skills, tips, tricks, ideas, techniques, toolbox of goodness to get everybody on the same page? So Laura started it off and she had some suggestions for me about what we can do before the meeting even starts. So Laura, give me some tips about before the meeting even starts. What should we do?
One of the first things I do is I consider the team makeup and the dynamics within that team, so that I know how to prepare for it. I found that preparing for the meeting is, while it can sound like a lot of work or feel like a lot of work, it actually makes your life so much easier later, because because you get out of it what you need, which is the productivity from your team. So, sending an agenda. I worked my last place of work, I was one of the few people who sent out agendas, and I always found that interesting. And I think it's something worth maybe we talk about a bit, like why do we do it? Why do we not do it? But sending an agenda, which levels the playing field, everyone knows what they're coming into. Um, and then knowing, another thing that I try to do is one-on-ones. So, but that's like an ongoing thing. So really getting to know your team and um, knowing who's going to be in that room and what their interests are and what you might be able to pull out of them um, to keep them engaged and to keep them that level playing field is really helpful.
One of the things too that kind of came up in our conversation when we were talking about prep work, whether it's right before the meeting starts or whether it's like when you're onboarding people, and Laura had mentioned these one-on-ones as well. One of the things that we're going to send you all as kind of the bonus just for being here today is a little list of personality assessments that we have used in our experience. Because doing those types of personality assessments really helps you identify what the strengths of your team is. And it doesn't, or I should say, it does help you to assign tasks appropriately because you know what people are passionate about. So you're going to get that as a bonus later on, which is, fun because you came here today. You get a little list of really cool assessments that you can do with your team. And I know that there's people on this call right now that have done them and found them extremely beneficial. So good. All right. So Laura, can you give me, okay, I'm going to challenge you now. Are you ready for a challenge? This is like the bonus round. If I'm thinking in advance that I know I'm going to have a meeting. Okay, I'm having a donor meeting with an artist. And then later I'm having a donor meeting with a financial banker planner person. How could I prepare differently for those two meetings?
That is a great question. So I let's say you do the same amount, I do the same amount of work for a particular project. But then I sit down and like we talked about earlier, I consider the people that are going to be in that room and their specific language. I hope this doesn't sound like I'm sitting around doing this for hours every day. It's really not that hard. It's just kind of articulating in your mind, oh, okay, John's a banker. If I want to get his buy-in on this, what does he need to hear? And what are the words that he uses when he's communicating, or what values have I seen from him in his behavior or conversations already? And let's say I have the same project and I have two pieces of paper in front of me. I'm just going to do an outline of a script. Like these are the kind of secret points I want to get through so I know what that ask is, or I know what the culmination of the conversation should be to have that roadmap. I'm sure you've all experienced this, but someone who's working in a bank who's wanting to hear something very different than a creative or an artist, if stereotypically, if we're talking to an artist or a creative, they're going to want to know, why are you passionate about this project? What turns you on about this? What lights you up? Where does this go into the future? How does this help the community? Those kinds of questions that an artist can get excited about, so you can naturally kind of get that buy-in. If you're talking to someone in the financial world, they may not care about that and they may actually think it's kind of weird. So a little woo-woo. Obviously you have to know your audience and evaluate that. That's not always the case, but I think for that kind of for that conversation, how I would prepare for it differently would be, there's my outline for the artist conversation and the culmination of the passion, right? Whatever that is. here's what it's good. And then on the banker side, here's what this plan is going to get us for the 5 years in the future. We're going to, we're going to sell more tickets, or we're going to gain more funding, or whatever that thing is that you're going after. You need to be able to talk in terms of money.
Yeah, like ROI, right? That
Yeah,
return on investment.
exactly. Yeah. Like what is this going to get me? Why should I care? Why don't I go to the museum next door and give them my money instead, or support them?
All right.
So
Awesome. That's great. So really that prep work is all about like just it's it's about preparing both yourself mentally, preparing yourself with techniques, preparing just thinking in advance. It's not like we're going into a meeting without preparing. We have to prepare in lots of different ways. Who's going to be there? How am I going to navigate these things? Laura gave us a really good example right there of how she would navigate a creative way different than someone who was wearing khakis, which was the alternate title for today's session. Speaking to creatives and khakis. So, all right, so we've done our prep work. We've kind of figured it out. We have it in our mind about how we're going to do this. We have a really grandiose plan of utopia within the meeting, right? All right, so then the meeting starts. Laura, what would you do in the beginning of the meeting just to kind of like take a break and also get things started? How would you start a meeting?
uh well, one of the, I think, underlooked things that I've noticed before is, if, let's say, you're the host of the meeting, um, meaning you're the one who called the meeting. Ideally, you're greeting people when they're coming in. You're already greasing the wheel, right? So that they feel comfortable in the room, and you're not just letting people look around and stare at their phones and, not be ready to participate. You're already trying to get them kind of engaged and energized for what's to come. So that's this kind of underlying thing that I think is really important, that I always do. The other thing is setting clear expectations at the top of a meeting. So I always leave just a minute or two to lay the groundwork. Let's say, for example, I have, um, my supervisor in the same meeting with a direct report for me. It's very important to me that, as much as I can, because I'm in the middle, that I say, okay, these are the rules that we're all going to be playing with, or playing in, so that my direct reports don't feel, I minimize it. I can't control how they feel, but I can minimize how nervous they are to speak in front of my supervisor, because let's say they don't see them very often, or let's say that supervisor is a donor or an executive, someone that has a lot of power over one of your direct reports. Yeah, so setting expectations, laying the groundwork, whatever that means. We're going to talk for 5 minutes. We're going to brainstorm for 20, and then we're going to wrap it up. And then I always have a parking lot of ideas. So if, let's say, you don't intend for a section of the meeting to be a brainstorming session, but it accidentally turns into one, which is very common, you can redirect that great idea by saying, oh, I'm going to put that in my parking lot of great ideas so that we can come back to it later. And that way, no matter who that person is with the great idea, isn't coming in going, you're not trying to redirect them in a rude way. You're just saying, hey, remember our rules? That's a great idea. It's going in the parking lot. So that,
Such a
it's
great
on track.
way to like circumvent a little rabbit hole situation, right?
Rabbit
Oh,
holes are the worst.
right? Exactly. We're going down this rabbit trail and it turns into this epic meeting. Ugh, that's what I used to call. I used to have like staff reporting out meetings, and we never knew how long they were going to be. And there would be so many rabbit trails, they would be almost 2 hours long. And that's when I started to coin the phrase, this is an epic meeting, which has many interpretations. It could be an epic fail, it could be an epic success, it could be epic in many ways. It was epic in length for sure because it was 2 hours. So I would always also use that qualifier of, hey, everybody, let's not make this one epic in length. just epic in quality. Okay, folks? So let's stay on track. Having humor is always a good thing, right? It helps to redirect people very easily. Oh my gosh, your amazing idea. That's getting parked right in the parking lot for the next meeting, kind of thing like that. All
And then
right.
they usually forget about it.
Right, exactly. Usually, well, and Laura even gave me an example. When we were doing our little brainstorming, she was like, yeah, sometimes you do put things in the parking lot and then you go back to that person to chat with them. Like, hey, you had this really great meeting idea that we put in the parking lot. How do you want to move about that? And they say, I'm good. It was just a fleeting thought. And then you're done, which is nice, but still. All right, so let's see. The challenge. We have a few minutes left and we're going to talk about what to do after the meeting, but I think it's worth a challenge time. All right, so Laura, if we have someone in the meeting who constantly is talking, I don't say this because I'm that person. Well, maybe I am. But what if we have somebody who's talking a lot? And we also have super quiet people in the same meeting. What can we do?
One of my favorite things to do is to let the person finish as much as much as you can, so they don't feel that you're not listening, but then step in and say, hey, that's a really great idea. I'm actually curious to hear what Cecily thinks about that idea. Me talking to, let's say, one of your introverts, someone who hasn't spoken up, maybe an intern, someone who you've gotten to know in your one-on-ones, so you know that they're kind of ready to jump in, but they're quiet and their power dynamic is not in their favor. Whenever I do that, I find that the dynamic in the room shifts very dynamically, because it's signaling actually to everyone else in the room that this person's voice is important too. And it's usually kind of even tells the person who's talking a lot, oh, I'm talking a lot, right? So you don't have to actually call them out and say, you're talking too much. And I'd say just another thing in the prep work real quick, that's really fun to play with that we don't really have time to get into right now, but if you know you've got introverts and extroverts coming into the same meeting, and let's say there is a brainstorming session, I always have people present those ideas, whether it's on sticky notes or some sort of engaging thing, because that forces the introverts to go ahead and get their voice in there so that they walk away from a meeting feeling like they were a part of it, even if, let's say, the extroverts are completely taking over. Long story short, it's always trying to balance the voices. You're never going to achieve it, but if you always strive to do it, it does make it better for everyone, and you'll see that your team respects you for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. And I think that's a good place to be, is knowing that when you lead the meeting, you always have to be thoughtful of the folks in the room. You definitely have a task at hand that needs to be completed, and you can focus on the task at hand. But you also have to focus on the people in the room in an effort to make sure everybody feels included. So it's being very mindful about how your meetings go, right? All right, so we have, let's take like 2 more minutes and summarize, like, what can we do after the meeting is done? Take about 2 minutes for that, and then we'll do our own little summary. So Laura, what do we do after the meeting is done to make sure that everybody feels productive and included?
Do a quick recap. It should take less than a minute, and just say, okay, here's what we did today. We brainstormed about this idea. We solved this problem. We decided we were going to move forward on this. I'm going to type, then let everybody know what's going to happen next. I'm going to type all this up for you. I'm going to send it out. Let me know if I missed anything. And then we know what our next steps are. So a
Nice.
summary and a follow-up email.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So good. So our summary for today is we talked about a really lot of great techniques and ideas on how we can find and include people. And I think, again, overarchingly, it's about being mindful in your meeting about people's contributions, finding ways to empower folks to chat, but also always kind of scanning and getting that idea, doing a little bit of forethought, being active within the meeting, and doing some follow-up. So with that being said, I'm going to go back over here and share my screen because we have just a few extra slides to show you. In that, like every museum mind that we do, everybody's going to get a little takeaway here. You're going to get this summary page right here that goes through just like some guidelines on how to have a very mindful meeting preparation before the meeting, during the meeting, after the meeting. I think we prepared ourselves, and most of the points that we talked about are on here, so it looks really good. And again, it's just to get you thinking about how to create really great meetings. So there's that. And then, of course, as your little bonus today, you're going to get the personality assessment for teams listing there so that if one of those is new to you, or if one of those is something you've done already, but you totally forgot you did it years and years and years ago, do it with your whole team. See what happens. You might find out some really amazing things. I just was reading like a LinkedIn Top Voice post, and it was all about just put something up that lists your team's interests. Easy as that, totally doable, right? Well, here you go. Let's talk about what they're good at. Awesome. All right. Let's see what's next. Ooh, next month. Okay, we're back to housekeeping right before we're going to do Q&A. We're going to do Q&A in like 1 minute. Next month, make sure that you register. Rainey is coming back. She's going to rise from the dead and she will be healthy. We know it. We're all sending her good healing energy so that she can be healthy again. Rainey, just because she is still speaking from the coffin, she put it in the chat for us. She put the link to next month's meeting in the chat. We had such amazing interest in her first talk about marketing that we're bringing it back. And we're going to talk this time a lot about social media engagement. We had our biggest crew when we talked about marketing. So we know that everybody wants to hear about it. We heard you, and we're going to do it again. Not the same talk, but 8 really awesome strategies, super powerful for social media engagement. Go ahead and register. Don't worry, we'll email you too. You'll get an email from us tomorrow. Thank you. Again, we are the hosts, Rainey and I. You can always book a free call with us, 30 minutes. One of the things, just as an aside, free commercial time. I'm doing a really amazing 4-part workshop series at the end of the month, all about museum engagement. If you want to get on, if you want to be part of it, let me know. It's cheap. So, make sure that you let me know if you want to be part of it. All right, intermission. I've talked a lot. I'm going to get a drink of water. Feel free to go ahead and put your questions in the chat. If you have some, while we're on intermission, I'm going to pull up registration and also take a little peek at the questions that were asked. All right. Oh, and as I changed my screen, I saw James's message. I'm so glad that you found the link. Awesome. All right, everybody, get a drink of water. If you have to pop off, feel free to pop off. But you're going to miss the best part. I mean, the fun part. I shouldn't say best part. All right, I have my questions up. All right, Laura, are you ready? Did you get a drink of water? Everybody else, are you ready? Did you get a drink of water? We're heading into the second section of the call. This is fantastic. All right, so let's start things out. Is anyone leveraging AI in their meetings? Oh, good question. Does anyone use any tools or platforms for hybrid roles that they love? This is a question to everyone as a whole. So just take yourself off mute and answer some of these thought-provoking questions for us. I'm curious. I just saw it here for the first time and was like, I would love to know. Anybody? AI fans out there?
Yeah, I can share a little bit, and I see that we have an AI buddy in this particular meeting. We have been really loving this platform called Read.ai. And like if you notice, like in our camera windows today, we have an AI robot friend listening in, but basically we've been starting to kind of use that in our like collaborative meetings. There's like a free that I think like a free tier of it that like records. I think it's like up to a certain number of meetings per month, and you can kind of designate which ones those are. But then obviously, like if you pay for the subscription, it can do up to a lot of different things. The really cool thing is it will automatically like sit in on all of your meetings and take notes for you. And then if you do the paid subscription, like it will record the meeting for you, give you like all sorts of really cool data and analytics, like facial expressions, and like this person was paying attention to at this time, and they like their facial made this kind of expression at this hour, and like gives you all this really cool feedback in live with your meetings and things like that. And then it summarizes all the notes for you and gives you action items afterward too. And of course, with it being AI, like there's always like little hiccups along the way. You just read through that and you can kind of adjust the summaries as needed. But it's really nice because it takes the thinking out of taking meeting minutes, and you can really be present in your actual meeting and have like a little assistant doing all of that stuff for you. And then it sends you like an automatic like summary once it's done kind of processing at the end of your meetings too. And then you can share that summary later on with your external partners as well. And then they can also join the platform if they'd want to. But you can do a good amount of like little things on it on the free version. And then of course you can always upgrade and get a lot more access to a lot of different features. So I've loved that. I'd be curious to hear if there's other platforms that other people are using. I see that Shayna, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, says that she uses Otter. I'd love to hear more about that, and if anyone else has any other platforms that they're loving.
I literally just got an email after one of my morning calls today from Super Normal. That's another one. I tried out Fathom at one point in time. Not a huge fan. I thought Read.ai was way better, and I actually pay for it now because I love it so much. And I know Rainey pays for it too. Shayna, tell us about Otter.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I sure can.
Okay. I'm using some kind of weird thing and I didn't know if this was gonna work.
Well, your weird thing is working.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I've used Otter and it sounds like it's extremely similar to Read AI and I've enjoyed it. The transcript is not always super accurate, so there's been some weird things pop in. You're like, I know I wasn't talking about oranges. Like, what is so that's kind of the downfall. The other thing I would just alert everyone to is to really make sure you check your settings before you start using it. Because I didn't realize that it was emailing out the transcript to everyone that was on like a meeting invite. So it would automatically record and then automatically send it to everyone, which is kind of great, but also kind of like, whoa, because you don't know, like, how long it was on or whatever. luckily nothing weird happened because of that, but that was a scary moment for me.
I was going to say that would be horrible if somebody wasn't attending and then there was a conversation about why they weren't attending and that was recorded.
Yeah. Well,
So
it was funny,
we
and
should
I didn't
always
even know
speak
it was
positively of all of our people and always, you know, say lovely
right.
things about all of our people, but we also know in reality that doesn't always happen. So
Yeah.
thank you for the otter input. So good. One of the things I have noticed too is that yes, you can share that report out after the fact, but a lot of times the platform is asking you to make a user profile on the new platform. And then you end up getting all these spam messages and think, well, not spam, but like marketing messages from whatever it is. So that's a little bit tricky. But as a facilitator too, you could totally send out that summary to everybody as part of your meeting minutes. And I have to say, like when I read the summary for read.ai, it'll give me a summary of all the calls I had the whole week. And I'm like, man, I need this person to be my PR person because like they make my summary sound so amazing. Like all the things that I did this week. It's great. It's great. All right. Let's look at more questions. If you have questions, come off of mute and ask them. Here's another good one. And we kind of answered it a little bit. What can people with power do to make sure they're checking their own biases when listening to or for ideas? Laura, I see your side eye. You want to contribute on that one? Because that's almost like being a meeting participant. We talked a lot about being the meeting leader,
Right.
but this is more of a question of if you are a participant.
I think that if you have a position of power and authority, it's really healthy to redistribute the power yourself because you have the power to do that. So, you know, I've been in meetings that felt very productive because someone with the authority to do so, instead of answering a question, they went ahead and grabbed the, like, you know, they acted like they were going to answer the question, but then they said, I'm actually really curious to hear, we talked about this before, I'm curious to hear what Cecily has to say about this. Because I think you have a pretty, we talked about this offline one day and you've had some really cool points, kind of set them up for success if you can, with something that they genuinely talked about. But if not, just redistributing that wealth of, or that conversation helps change the dynamic in the room and really sets the tone for the values for the team. I find it doing things like that kind of quiets the loud voices just a little bit and helps the people who are scared to speak up feel comfortable to do so. Sometimes they need permission, but sometimes, you know, the one-on-ones can really help too, because you're teaching them that you value their opinions. So they're more likely to speak up.
One of the things that I noticed too in the time that I was in a lot of meetings and even here sometimes, it's okay for things to be quiet. Like wait for people to expand on their ideas. Like there doesn't have to be constant chatter all the time. You can ask a question and wait. It might get super awkward if you wait too long, but sometimes people feel that awkwardness and then they hop in because they don't want to feel awkward anymore, which makes them talk. You know what I mean? So that's kind of one thing is like white noise, or, you know, like kind of that white space on a page is kind of comforting sometimes. Also giving people time, I think is important. And also when I participated as meetings as a leader, and like, I always had strong opinions about everything. So I always wanted to talk and I always wanted to give my opinion. And I always wanted to, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Let's do this. Da, 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 da. I had to remind myself to be quiet and wait and see what other people had to say. Because as a leader, sometimes when we come out and say, oh my gosh, I really think that's a phenomenal idea and we should move forward with that. Well, what if there was 3 other ideas in the room from somebody who's not at the same level as you are? And now they're not going to say anything because you think that so-and-so's idea was amazing and that you should move forward with it. So they're just going to pocket theirs and be like, well, whatever, they're going to go with Sally. That's fine. So that was one of my things too, is like, leave the white space and be quiet. Or form your opinion in this question. Oh my gosh, I really think that we could have a partnership with this. What kind of partnerships do you think that we could facilitate with this exhibit? Where in the back of your mind, you know that Home Depot is waiting over here to be a partner with you all, but you're getting the ideas circulating within the team so that there can be more ideas. So form of question sometimes helps too. Oh, quiet makes me uncomfortable. Yes, it's helpful. It sometimes is. All right, let's see. How do we build trust with an employee that is skeptical of those in positions of authority? Good question. If you have an answer, pipe up. James, I know that you've been in leadership before. Do you have any thoughts, ideas?
Sure. I think it starts with say what you're going to do and then do it. You know, be consistent. Don't give them reasons to doubt your sincerity. Certainly do not lie to people. Don't sit there and say, hey, that's the best idea ever, and then leave the room and tell everybody else, wow, what a waste of time. You know, if it's, you just got to be straight with people, be upfront with them, and have to develop that relationship. There's no one thing I can think of that you can say to somebody who's skeptical that's going to automatically remove that. But over time, they will realize, hey, you know, this person does what they say they're going to do. They're really trying to work together, and just open communication. It always seems to help rather than hurt in those situations.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you. Trust and respect is the key to so many things. Oh my gosh, right? Yeah.
I had someone on my team who like was like that too, had a lot of trouble trusting just upper management in general, like people's like James said, like saying, doing what they say they're gonna do or things like that. And I think like taking the time to listen to where that might be coming from. Is that a previous job trauma, or is it something that they have had happen to them, and giving them space to like share why that distrust exists, seeing where that disconnection is, and then like what James said, like being that the opposite of that, like doing your best to be that leader that says that they're going to do what they do. Or like if you know like that person was really irked by leadership never showing up to meetings on time, and because of that they distrusted them over time, like knowing and like being somebody who is punctual will help to eventually remove that distrust. And so like figuring out like where it comes from sometimes can help you navigate or like show that employee like, hey, like we're not like this, or this is how we make sure that we don't become that way, and this is how we can build trust in that way. Yeah.
And I think too that like just spinning off of that idea of it's okay to be vulnerable as a leader. You know, like you forgot. They asked you to do something for you and you forgot. So what do? Walk the other way and pretend like it never came up in conversation because you don't like confrontation? Or do you go to them and you say, oh my gosh, I am so incredibly sorry. This came up and I totally forgot to write down what we were talking about. And I can see now that you can't get your work done because I didn't do my work. I'm so sorry. Can you help me remember? Like, next time you say something to me, feel free to send an email just to confirm that I have it on my calendar, or XYZ. Come to me. If you haven't heard from me in 3 days, come to me and ask me for it. I would say that to my team all the time. Or I would be like, hey, hold on a second. I'm not somewhere where I can write this down. Can you email me that idea? And I'm not always just putting it back on them, but I'm also telling them, like, I need to write things down to remember them. It needs to be on my calendar. There's a million thoughts going on in this mind all the time. So being vulnerable with your team, I think, is important to build trust as well. Laura, do you have any tips on that one?
Those are James and how do you say, is it Maddie?
Nadai.
Nadai. Those are both spot on. I think, like, I like to think of it as leading with integrity. So like if you've got team members or staff who you know are distrustful of leadership, like you said earlier, identifying what that thing is and then making sure you don't do that. It is as simple as showing up to meetings on time if leadership has a tendency not to do that. And just over time, you show that that not everyone is lumped into that same category. And I totally agree about being vulnerable. It really all goes back to just emotional intelligence, being able to communicate that you're human too actually can win a lot of trust, because you make mistakes, and being willing to admit that makes people remember that you're human, and therefore they trust you more.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Good comment too in the chat, James. I like how NCIS, but always thought the never apologize, it's a sign of weakness, is a bad rule. I agree 100%. Oh my gosh. But I'm assuming Brene Brown, Dare to Lead, 100%. So good. If you haven't watched her TED Talk on vulnerability, it's amazing. Makes you think a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. So good. So good. All right. More questions, or just like random museum things you guys want to talk about. There's new peeps in the house. What kind of museum things do you want to chat about? I see somebody from OMSI. I think you're our first OMSI person. The thing I know about OMSI is traveling exhibits. Daniel,
And I'm the traveling exhibit manager.
oh, well, hey, tell me your favorite traveling exhibit from OMSI. We're taking a rabbit hole chase somewhere else.
I will say my current favorite exhibit that we have is called Allegramente Happy Brain. It's an early childhood education exhibit. It's just so cute. It was the first exhibit at OMSI that I got to work at from start to finish. There's a lot of my DNA in there as well, both literally and figuratively. And it's just really cute. And, the novel idea of leading with Spanish first to make it more accessible for Latinx audiences it's just really great. It's near and dear to my heart. There's lots of cute animals and people and fun things to do. And, there's simple little button games, as well as like the classic OMSI tilt table. That's like my favorite tilt table that we've ever done. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And we actually just featured this in one of the design charrettes that we did. And the part that I love is it is all science-based, like not content, like science content. Yes, there's science content in there, but Daniel, you can explain this way better than I can. So tell everybody about like how this started. And again, it's called Allegramente Happy Brain from OMSI.
Yeah, so it started off as one of our NSF proposals. OMSI is really good about making sure that grant dollars from DC get over to the West Coast. We try our damnedest every single time. And so it started off as the exhibit title was called Wired to Play. And it was originally all about play development, how it impacts your child's brain, learning experiences. And then we started working with Vroom Resources, which is a division of the Bezos Foundation, and really kind of nailing in on how your child's brain evolves and adapts over time. And the coolest thing about the exhibit is that it's actually kind of a Trojan horse exhibit. There are a lot of activities for a 0 to 5 audience, but in actuality, the exhibit is geared towards the caregivers of the 0 to 5 audience and talking about your children and how engaging with them and providing mimicry and play activities really just fires that brain development up. And we even go so far in the font of wisdom. There are little buttons below that make a cat go meow and make a splash and make a frog jump. And they're just little light boxes, and kids love to just hit them over and over and over again. We all know button walls work great. But above, there is a button for the adults as well that's showing your ganglionic brain development and how neurons connect and form, mass pathways. And so, yeah, I love the exhibit. It's a lot of fun. And we really try to, nail in with science, but then make the science fun and not really, slam it down your throat. But especially with that one, it's the biggest message that anyone can take away is like, your child needs you. That's the biggest part.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. Okay, so for one, my nerdy brain is like so excited to hear all of this stuff because I heard a little bit about it from like a third party. And they were like, Allegramente is so amazing. I was like, oh, tell me why. But coming from like one of the designers, Daniel, you like made it so much cooler than they did. So thank you so much. They did a great job that made me excited about it, but you did a wonderful job. Thank you. My nerdy brain.
I love being talked about when I'm not even in the room. So that's
you absolutely were. You 100% were. I love that too. But I had no idea that there was affiliation with Vroom. I have talked about Vroom and I've given it as a resource to a million people. And like we had the decals for children's museums, like prepped and ready to go. We never ended up putting them up, but we were getting funding to put them up. And again, empowering parents to say, you have what you need to be your child's first teacher. Lovely. Wonderful. What an awesome place to end today. Oh my gosh. We're so glad that you all have come today. You will get an email from us tomorrow with the summary page bonus documents. Before we go, can we give our friend Lara a round of applause for being an amazing interviewee, but also our first big collaborator on Museum Minds. So she wins the gold star for collaboration.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for coming. We will see you next month and I'll email you tomorrow. See you later, friends.
Bye.